Controversial content warning. Hey Orchid peeps, welcome to LPLR Orchids. Tonight we're going to discuss a little bit about fertilizing your orchids and how we fertilize our orchids. We'll show you that process here. But a couple quick comments. Orchid fertilization is one of the least important things to worry about and stress about when it comes to growing orchids. Yes, they need it because they're in pots, or even mounted, grown inside or something. You know, they only get the nutrients that we give them. So they need those nutrients to produce chlorophyll and make flowers and all that. But generally speaking, we don't fertilize very often. The general guidelines that you'll read is, or see other YouTubers talking about, is weekly. So a week fertilizer solution once a week. And yeah, I mean, we do a week fertilizer solution, quarter to half strength. We'll show you that here in a second. But we don't fertilize every week. For us, flushing is just as important as fertilization, because we need to prevent salt buildup, especially in our Paphiopedilums that we grow in semi-hydroponics. We do flush a lot, and we maybe fertilize on average every other week, twice a month or so. We'll fertilize, sometimes less than that. In fact, a couple years ago, we didn't fertilize at all for almost a year. That's no exaggeration. And yeah, things grew, even our catasetums. Things kept growing. Now, yeah, we didn't get as many flowers, but we still got some flowers on our Phalaenopsis and stuff, and a couple paths. It's not, I don't think, super critical. Now, yes, for some orchids, you really have to pay attention, you've got to dial in, but for generalist orchids, for the home grower, don't stress about your fertilizer.
Don't stress about your fertilizer.
Do a little research, find some stuff that works for you. So the big disclaimer before we get any further, this is our routine that we found works for us. We know that everyone has to use a certain type of fertilizer and everyone's right and everyone else is wrong. I get it. I don't know why it's like the most controversial thing you see online about orchids almost. And thanks to Tina for reaching out and asking about how we fertilize our orchids. So thought it was perfect timing because, I was planning on fertilizing this weekend. Haven't fertilized in it's been 3 weeks ago was the last time we fertilized. So it was time to give them a little shot. We do notice that they tend to not recover, but just show a little bit more livelihood after we fertilize. The last thing is what type of fertilizer that's going to work for you depends kind of a lot on your water that you start with. So there is a big difference in that. If you are on well water, for instance, that's really heavy, hard water, that's going to affect your fertilizer that you choose. And certainly if you're using rainwater, right, that's also, you may want to look at a different type of fertilizer with different formulations, which, as always, they're shown right on the bottle, so you can read all about that stuff. But generally, we don't test anything. The only time I've tested a fertilizer for any sort of, values of anything, I use a pH meter I borrowed from my school for a night. A couple of years ago, we bought some fertilizer from the local, the plant nursery, and it was kind of in a big box, a big company name, Orchid Fertilizer. Yeah, it bubbled and was really weird and effervesced when I was mixing up the solution, and it was clear that the roots didn't like it. They kind of turned a funny color after we used it. I only used it twice. And that's the only time I've ever tested a fertilizer solution for anything, and it was pretty acidic. So yeah, it wasn't good, and that one I ditched, and we've never tried to use it again. We have a couple different types that we use, whatever we have on hand. So let's get right into it, huh? Let's fertilize some orchids. But first, of course, it's your orchid interlude of the day. Phalaenopsis has opened its first flower. Look at that lip. It's like a stingray. There we go. The Tetraspis green in back has opened up finally after a couple weeks. It was slower than I hoped. And we'll do a rundown of our seedlings in a couple weeks again as they open up more. Back to the main topic, the fertilizers that we typically use. So we've got a couple types here. The one we'll be using today is the Orchid Fit, and the only reason is because our main fertilizer, which is the fertilizer here, the green stuff, that we get from Orchidean, Schwerte Orchideen here in Germany. There you go. Neither of these are like, we don't have paid content or anything, obviously. Look at our channel, but we just use it. It works well. That's the only reason that I tend to stick with this one as our primary, but we ran out of this, and so that's why we opened this bottle of Orchid Fit that we get from, well, we got a couple bottles of this years ago from what was Rolka Orchidean. You can see their old logo there, Rolka. That now is bought up by Equigenera Europe, and so they used to sell Orchid Fit. I don't even know if they do anymore, but this supposedly has some kind of biotic, like probiotic, like a seaweed or a kelp extract or something also added in, so I don't know. But on both of them, they give you instructions. I'm sorry, it's in German, but basically it's one red capful of this per every 2 liters of water. So that's the full strength for that. So we mix up 5 liters at a time. Well, we actually mix up a lot more than that when we fertilize, but we do it in 5-liter bottles. And so I typically will do 1, maybe 1.5 caps when we fertilize. I'll show you that in a second. Now this one just has milliliter conversions, and so for this, when I typically will just put in, I have a little plastic medicine cap that has like 25 mils, and that's what I put in for this one when we use that fertilizer. And again, we only do that 20 milliliters in a 5-liter jug, or 1 to 1.5 capfuls. Now for our catasetums, they tend to want more, and that's a whole other issue on catasetum fertilizing. We are the rank amateurs who are still using water soluble. That's what these are, right? They're liquid form, so the nutrients are dissolved in water, and you just pour them into a thing and fill it with water. So these are water soluble nutrients, fertilizers. The, let's say, professional growers of catasetums, the guys who really know what they're doing, they seem to all use like a slow time release fertilizer pellet into their media. So like what's it called? Osmocote or something like that is what they use. Now we haven't experimented with that just because we're lame at growing, and we don't actually want to see our plants bloom, I guess. I don't know. It seems like the missing ingredient. But when I do, I put 3 capfuls. So I mix this at, I've been mixing this at actually over full strength to fertilize the catasetums. And I've been doing that almost daily for the catasetums. We tend to fertilize all of our plants the same, except the catasetums. Those get a much stronger and more frequent fertilizer, right? Because they grow a ton in only a couple months, and then they go dormant. So they need a lot, and I think this water soluble barely gives them any each time. And so I'm probably burning the roots a little bit because it's so strong, and they still aren't getting enough of what they need. So yeah, I think maybe next year we'll do this time slow released fertilizer for the catasetum. So that's how we do it. No stress fertilization of our orchids. And yeah, I mean, we're happy with our results. Well, and if you guys like the content, please hit subscribe. And if you want some more simple Karen culture tips and no stress, check out this playlist. Hope you guys are having a good one. We'll see you back here at Open Lar soon.